Hello, I'm Robert T. Smith, host of Support Your Local Podcast. I want to take a moment to remind you to hit that fast forward button. That is, unless you want to hear about something good being done. Anyone who knows me knows that I love bowling. In 2016, I founded the Smith Family Bowling Scholarship Foundation, intended to honor my father's hard work and dedication to community service and award scholarships to youth bowlers throughout the nation. To date, we've awarded well over $15,000 in scholarships. If you are a bowler, know a bowler, have ever seen a bowler, or heard about anyone who has ever seen a video of a bowler, I'd love for you to help promote the SFBSF and its mission. Please go to sfbsf.com and see what we're all about. While you're there, please consider hitting that donate button and helping us make a brighter future for our youth. Again, that's sfbsf.com. Thank you for your time.
And this episode is brought to you by Dye Real Estate and Land Company. They are the real estate agents based in Northwest Ohio that are the go-to company for people who enjoy the rural lifestyle and are looking to buy and sell some property. The whole team is amazing. I've used them in the past. I'm partial to Jaylene myself for obvious reasons, but they're all there for you whenever you need them. If you're in the market, just drop them a line at info@dyerealestate.com. That's info@dyerealestate.com. And don't forget to tell them Support Your Local Podcast sent you.
I now declare the quick draw competition open.
Howdy, everyone. Pull up a chair, kick up your boots, and take a sip on an ice cold brew. It's the Quick in the Pod, the Season 2 episodes of Support Your Local Podcast, where we take a look at the 1995 Western classic, The Quick and the Dead, one chapter at a time. I am your host, as always, Robert Smith, coming to you from beautiful Tombstone. Yes, that one. Today we are taking a look at Chapter 25, Wake Up Call. But before we do, we have a little bit of a special segment of Put My Damn Name on the Board today. Let's go out to our reporter out in the field for Put My Damn Name on the Board.
Put my damn name up.
Hey everybody, this is a very special Put My Damn Name up on the board. This time, instead of an actor or an actress, producer, director, anything like we've done previously, we get to actually talk about where this movie was shot. I know throughout the chapters we've been kind of negotiating back and forth on whether or not this movie is based in Arizona or if it's down in Mexico. I think we finally resolved that with some of the Nogales talk and kind of getting us back to into Arizona. That's coincidentally where I am right now. And even further where I am right now, don't tell anybody just in case it's illegal. I am actually right near where they shot this movie. This is the Old Tucson Studios. That's right. And when you go on to Wikipedia or anywhere and you look up some of the movies and things that were shot at Old Tucson Studios, there are so many things that stand out. First, just the sheer amount of movies that were being cranked out each year. You know, you think about it in terms of nowadays where we get, a couple blockbusters and all that, but, not specifically a group of movies that's shot at a specific studio. And sadly, Westerns aren't really a big thing anymore. But, there was a time here where we were getting 3, 4, sometimes even 5 and 6 just Western movies being shot at these Tucson studios every single year for decades. That's kind of how famous where we're going today. And for those of you that out there that aren't old enough to remember the 60s and 70s, and let's be honest, I was born in 82, so I'm not one of those people either, but I had older parents, so I grew up watching this stuff in rerun form. But for a long time, Westerns were the dominant genre of movies and TV shows. Like we're inundated with superhero movies now. That's kind of how Westerns were for that time frame. And even if you're not a fan of that genre, the Western genre, which, if you're not That's okay. That's perfectly fine. I'm not entirely sure how I landed you as a listener, given the two movies that we've gone over so far in this podcast. But hey, thank you for listening. I appreciate you, and please continue. But I guarantee as we go through some of these TV shows and movies today, you're going to hear a lot of titles of shows and movies that you've at least heard of. They're in the zeitgeist of society. Speaking of, let's go ahead and dive in. So, on the small screen, it's a list literally of the who's who of classic TV shows. We have various episodes of Rawhide from 59 to 65. Have Gun Will Travel, Wagon Train. We get Hoss and the Gang and Bonanza. We get Gunsmoke. We get the pseudo western. We'll count it. Kung Fu. How the West Was Won, Little House on the Prairie, and I can't confirm if it was the homecoming episode of Little House. For you Scrooge fans out there, that remains a bit of a mystery for me. Taking our show full circle, we have The New Maverick with one Mr. James Garner, Highway to Heaven, Webster, which I found a little interesting, Reading Rainbow with Lieutenant Geordie LaForge, the Scare 90s Kids 2-pack of America's Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries, nightmare fuel for us kids growing up when we did. And in 1989, there's one on here that threw kind of a nostalgia pie right in my face, WWF Primetime Wrestling. And granted, I'm not entirely sure that I'm allowed to call it the WWF. If not, please bleep that out and put Howard Finkel's voice over here saying WWE. I don't want the pandas to come after me like they did poor Vince. But that's just the TV side of things, folks. So let's take a look at the movies, and I promise you there are so many on here that realistically, if we keep the Western thing going, these are future seasons of the show. And there are just so many of them on here that I'm not going to name them all. I know sometimes I get a little long-winded when it comes to the put my damn name on the boards. I'll try to keep it as brief as I can and not put you completely asleep, but just some of the bigger hitters are 1945, we have the Bells of St. Mary's. 1950, we have Winchester 73 and Broken Arrow. And I'm not talking about the John Travolta one. This is the good one. 1957, we have 310 to Yuma, which coincidentally that was remade relatively recently, sometime in the 2000s, with Christian Bale and our own beloved Russell Crowe. Definitely looking at possibly doing a little bit with that down the road. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Also in 1957, we have Gunfight at the OK Corral, the first one. You'll see as we go through here, there's about 4 or 5 movies under that title, but this one, admittedly, was off my radar for the longest time. It wasn't until a couple months ago when this started popping up on Pluto TV, which, shout out to Pluto TV. I can honestly say that without Pluto TV, this podcast may never actually have happened. It was me sitting there with COVID, hating myself, being forced to watch stuff on loop when Support Your Local Sheriff and Support Your Local Gunfighter kept popping up over and over and over again, and gave me the chance to create the script that created the show. So shout out to Pluto TV, free plug for you guys. But a Gunfight at the OK Corral recently was kind of on the loop on their Western channel. And I finally caught it. And great cast. Includes Bones McCoy from Star Trek, the original 60s TV series. 1959, we have The Hangman. And we have the John Wayne Howard Hawks classic, Rio Bravo. Stay tuned for that one. I guarantee you that will be a future season of the show. 1963, we have McClintock. 1966, we have El Dorado, or as I like to call it, Rio Bravo Redo. 1967, we have The Way West and A Time for Killing. 1970, we have Dirty Dingus McGee. That one's come up on our, I believe it was during season 1, where we talked about the Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin Western. And Rio Lobo, or as I like to call it, Rio Bravo Redo. 1971, and I've admittedly not dug deep enough to see if these three are interconnected, or if it's just kind of a Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp slash Tombstone situation. But ironically, and it's in the same topic, but we have Gunfight at the OK Corral, another one. Moments of Destiny dash the OK Corral, and Showdown at the OK Corral, all of them in the same year. So I gotta think that those are interrelated, but I don't know. 1973, we have Joe Kidd. 1976, we have Clint Eastwood classic The Outlaw Josie Wales. 1977, the all-time Western classic Harlem Globetrotters. 1978, we have The Sackets, which is based on a series of books by Louis L'Amour, starring Tom Selleck and Sam Elliott, along with so many iconic Western stars, Slim Pickens, Jack Elam, you name it, they're probably in that series. And I have very, very fond memories of that one. This will probably be a future season because Dad, obviously, those that knew Dad, he literally owned every single Louis L'Amour book, paperback, hardback, and leatherbound. It was his favorite author. We had a wall of bookcases that was nothing but Louis L'Amour books, and therefore we also had VHSs of all the TV movies that they based on it, and The Sackets was one of them. And I remember it being a two VHS set, which was kind of cool when I was a kid. We're talking, this was in 1978, so I would have seen it when I was a little kid, probably like 1985-ish, 87-ish, but would watch that kind of on loop. It was one of my favorites. 1979, Frisco Kid. 79 as well, The Gambler with Kenny Rogers. 1981, we have Cannonball Run. 1983, we have Cannonball Run Part 2. 1984, Revenge of the Nerds. 1986, we have The Three Amigos, the Is It Great, Is It Not Great movie with Chevy Chase, Steve Martin, and Martin Short. Three people that I admittedly probably would not watch a movie alone with them being the leads of it. But together, does it make a good movie? I'll leave that up to you. You tell me. 1987, we have Desperado 1 and Desperado 2, which I remember being a favorite of my sisters and my mom when it came on TV. So apparently the lead was pretty hot. I can't attest to that. That's not my flavor. No shame in the game. I just remember it more for the Eagles song. 1987 as well, we have The Quick and the Dead. And when I say that, I know there's going to be a lot of you going, wait a minute. You keep saying that this was 1995, The Quick and the Dead that we're going over, and that's true. Our movie is from 1995. This is actually a TV movie, once again, starring Sam Elliott. And once again, much like The Sack, it's based on the Louis L'Amour book. It is very good. If you get a chance, check it out. It's one of the better ones. It's also great, but apologies to anyone that found our little podcast thinking that we were going over this version of The Quick and the Dead. Maybe someday we will. We'll see. I love me some Sam Elliott. 1990, we have Young Guns 2. 1993, we have Tombstone. Yes, that one. 1994, we have the Can Crocodile Dundee do a movie that's not Crocodile Dundee movie, Lightning Jack, one that I saw numerous times on one of our free months of HBO, starring Paul Hogan, also starring Cuba Gooding Jr. It's got some cute moments into it. It's not the greatest, but it's not the worst either. There are definitely worse Westerns out there to watch than Lightning Jack. And finally, are you tired yet? I apologize if you are, but we have our movie in 1995, the Sam Raimi Western classic, The Quick and the Dead. And keep in mind, this is around the time that there was the unfortunate fire that destroyed so much of this classic location. And this is obviously where things kind of taper off in regards to filming. But I was excited to see that there is still quite a bit of filming throughout the 90s, early 2000s, and even up to 2019. So Old Tucson Studios is back up and running. They are still doing filming. I'm not seeing a lot of big name movies on this list, but admittedly there's not a lot of big name westerns that go on nowadays. So hopefully that'll come back in a resurgence again. It seems like every 20 years years or so, there's a brief resurgence of westerns. So let's keep our fingers crossed. But you know what, guys? I'm sure I've bored you guys enough on this, but it was so exciting to have such a iconic piece of movie history, literally just up the road. You know, with the actual real life OK Corral one way, and these studios the other way, it is so cool. And one of the things that one of the proudest moments of my life. When Dad came out here a few years ago with my mom and my sister Tam, I was so excited to be able to take Dad to Tombstone and have him actually walk around, because just knowing how much westerns meant to him, and what it would mean for him to be able to actually do that. And I certainly hope that it meant even nearly as much to him as it did to me. But I didn't know at the time that the Old Tucson Studios existed. You know, I wasn't into that part of things yet, but I definitely would have taken him there too if I'd known, because, you know, like, so much of my childhood, if you haven't gotten from listening to the show, so many of my fond memories of Dad are wrapped up in these shows and movies that I just went over with you guys. So it's heartwarming, and it's so cool to live out here and to be able to brag about those things, and to go see it whenever I want to. It's literally right down the road. But hey, enough of this mushy stuff. Let's get back to the show. This has been Put My Damn Name on the Board.
Add my name to the list.
Attaboy!
And Robert, thank you. We are back to talk about Chapter 25, Wake Up Call. We start our chapter right where we left off, with the two guards standing on either side of the clock face. And the clock is set at 1 minute until 6. And for those that don't live out here in Arizona, I can attest that, yes, in fact, it is that bright and morning filled at 6 a.m. I often go take my walks around 5:30 when it's still nice and cool. I go to work around 5:30, 6 o'clock every morning. And yeah, it's bright and sunshiny and a full ass day by 6 in the morning. I can attest that. It's great for someone who gets up early like me, but it is not so great for someone who loves it completely pitch black while they're sleeping, like my wife Jess. But anywho, Herod stares at the clock, and we cut to court. His gun is in his belt, and he's ready for a left-handed draw. And he now has the same bleeding and bruising on the side of his hand that he has on his wrists. And I'm not entirely sure if that's supposed to be dried blood from his wrist, or if now the injury to his hand is actually on his left hand too, but on the side? Question mark? It's a little bit confusing, but both get their hands on the butts of their guns, and as the clock strikes the hour, Herod pulls his gun just in time for a giant explosion from the clock tower. His two guards go flying, and Herod hits the dirt face first. More explosions hit, and we actually see the clock tower blow up again. And I'm not sure if this is supposed to be showing things happening at the same time, or just a continuity issue. If they paid a lot of good money for these explosions, and they had probably 3 or 4 cameras set up to make sure that they capture it, because you're only going to do this once. They're literally blowing shit up in real life. So, might as well put all that coverage on the screen. You paid for it. So we cut to Herod sitting in the dirt, and he's pulling his gun up to his face to squint at aiming. And his house is right behind him, and boom, his house explodes, sending him right back to the dirt. Now, I'm okay with the concussion of the blast from the tower, kind of disorienting him I can get that. Even just the shock or surprise of it happening. I don't think that he had planned this in his grand scheme of things. So it's probably coming to a bit of a surprise of having the entire town blow up around him. But you'd think it still wouldn't have to take 10 seconds to fire his gun. I think that's just plot driving, so Court doesn't get shot. But in all fairness, I have never tried to shoot somebody while buildings were exploding right above my head. So I admit my ignorance to that fact. If you, in fact, have ever shot somebody while buildings were exploding behind you, please reach out to us. Let us know. Email me at supyourlocalpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what the circumstances were, whether the statute of limitations have passed, and whether I, as a mandated reporter, need to let anybody know. These are some great practical explosions. First and foremost, Sam Raimi was not messing around with CGI when it came to this. According to what I could find, they built the set for the movie at Old Tucson Studios, as we talked about in our put my damn name on the board. Get your seasons right, Robert. Come on. And then they just literally just blew it to shit in real life, which I found interesting. But we see Court put his arms up to block his eyes from the blast, and I'm fairly certain now that the blood we saw on the side of his left hand is from the wounds on his wrist. So I'm sorry, Sam Raimi. Shame on you for that continuity issue. Herod gets back up to a crouch again, and he aims his pistol, but before he can fire, the buildings down the block start exploding as well. And there's this great shot as the pyro is coming off of the building into the street of this stuntman who's dressed like Court. So I'm assuming he's supposed to be Court diving out of the way. But we'll soon see where the explosions are all about if you haven't figured out things out on your own. But this seems to be way too close for comfort for someone who is supposedly working with Court to make this possible. So we'll see what I mean here in a little bit. We do see Maddie flinching at the explosion, and she's dressed all in black, and supposedly, I guess, she'd be mourning the loss of her husband, or at least her husband in a deleted scene. Otherwise, she's just her boyfriend. But I am no religious person. I don't get to mandate what marriage is. ... We see the crowd running for their lives as explosion after explosion goes off, and the pigeon's nest is completely obliterated, as well as several other buildings. I'm no detective, I'm no investigator. I'm sure the people that investigated the fire at Old Tucson Studios did a wonderful job in trying to figure out what caused it, but I will put on my Detective Pikachu hat and say that The Quick and the Dead came out in 95, and in it, they're blowing up Old Tucson Studios. So maybe, just maybe, the fire in 1995 at Old Tucson Studios, maybe that case can finally be closed. Thank you. There's a cloud of smoke rolling across the street, and we see Herod face first in the dirt, and there's money falling all around him, and it's presumably from that chest provided by Wells Fargo. And I don't care what the plan is from here on out in regards to the movie, but they could have made sure that the money made it out at least. I don't know if it's a contingency plan just in case Herod makes it out alive. We'll destroy the money too, but he'd be at least $123,000 poorer. Like, I can get that, but I don't know. I think that I would have incorporated a safety plan for the money in when I was making up this plan, but that's not my plan. We end with Herod getting up and shaking his head to clear the cobwebs, and I can't even imagine the ringing in his ears right now. But we end everything with him looking down the street at the carnage, and makes you wonder what else is he going to see. So let's find out next week as we quickly charge towards the end. Stay tuned next week when we go over Chapter 26, You Stole My Life, with special guest star Shizzy. Yes, Shizzy is back for yet another one. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. But until we meet again, if you haven't already, please, like, share, subscribe, rate, review, do all those wonderful things that you guys do on social media and your podcasting platform. Let people know about us. I am super excited, a little sad to finish up this movie, but super excited that we're approaching the end, and really excited for the things that we have coming up afterwards. So definitely stay tuned on that. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything. But until we meet again, folks, I love you. Take care, and always support your local podcast.